Hey, in this section, we're going to go over the education section on a resume. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so the education section on a resume, there are some things that you need to include. So school name, the city and the state or the country, and the degree. You wouldn't believe how many people forget to put the degree. Was it an associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, PhD? And also the field. Was it a bachelor's of science or a bachelor's of arts? And then what was your major? Did you do computer science or Spanish or English literature? Additionally, would definitely include any sort of a relevant specialization, minor, certificate. I know different schools call it different things. At some schools, they might call it a certificate. Others might call it a minor. And then if you're still in school, you definitely need to include your expected graduation date. So expect your graduation date, May of 2021 or December of 2022, whenever it is that you're expecting. If you're still in school, you definitely need to include that on a resume. There are just a couple of things that you don't need to include on the education section. And one is when you started. So you don't necessarily need to put, I started August of 2018, and then I plan to graduate in May of 2023. You don't really need to put when you started. Additionally, if you've changed majors or if you've changed career paths, you don't need to put that on your resume. You can certainly leave that off. There are a few things that are optional here, and I think they're going to depend a lot on when you're going to graduate or previously when you graduated. So number one is GPA. This is a really common question. Do you have to include a GPA on your resume? So different companies and different organizations will require a GPA. A lot of them don't. For me, and individually, in my opinion, I don't really care about your GPA. I care more about did you graduate. And I think that especially the later you get in your career, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of experience, the less important your GPA becomes. Certainly earlier in your career, if you're 1 or 2 years out, or if you're still in school looking to get your first job out of college, GPA is going to be a bit more important. Honors, if you graduated cum laude or summa cum laude, you can include that, but you don't necessarily need to have that you graduated cum laude and then also include 3.6 GPA. I can sort of infer that if you graduated cum laude, you had a good GPA. So I would probably recommend if you're going to include that you graduated with honors, you don't necessarily need to put the GPA. It sort of is saying the same thing twice in a different way. Additionally, you don't have to put when you graduated, past tense. So if you graduated in May of 2013, you don't need to put that on a resume. I think, again, if you're sort of fresh out of school or you recently graduated within the last year or two, it might be more relevant and it would help your reader. However, if you've been out of school, I'd say probably 5+ years, I think when you graduated becomes a lot less important. And so, if you graduated more than 5 years ago, when you graduated, that date doesn't necessarily need to be on your resume. Another optional could be a study abroad. So if you happen to have studied abroad or did any sort of a dual enrollment program, I know a lot of schools are doing more and more dual enrollments. That can be something really good to include on your resume. Just make sure that if you include your study abroad, to include the school name, city and country, the field that you studied, and the timeline. Did you study abroad for 1 week or a semester or a year? Okay, so moving on to a couple of examples of actually including all of the information that we just talked about. So here's my information. So I graduated from the University of Alabama. It's in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I did a Bachelor of Arts, and I had a double major in IB in Spanish. I also had a regional specialization in Latin America. I graduated cum laude, and I didn't include my GPA, right? And I graduated May of 2013. So I wanted to show two different sort of views. So here, imagine if I were going to have this information in the top left-hand corner, or maybe over the top right-hand corner of a resume. I would include all that information line after line. But if you're doing a format where you're reading from top to bottom, and maybe you don't have different columns, right? Then what might be better is to include all the information that you can on one line. So here for Universidad de La Habana, I included that next to Havana, Cuba, semester abroad, and my GPA. So those are a couple of different ideas for how you can organize your information. And really, it sort of depends on the layout that you're going to go for. If you're going for a modular layout or a layout where you might have a couple of columns, it might make more sense to do one line of information for each individual information. But if you're going for more of a top down, it's just one column from top down, then it might make more sense to include your information with the name of the school next to the city, so on and so forth. So there's a couple tips for education section on your resume. Thanks.